I read this gospel reading about people wanting to come to the front, and I thought that's generally not a problem Lutherans have, in my experience. I have been here 2 years, sat in the front row every Sunday. I have yet to have somebody come and give me a dirty look for sitting in their seat. Nobody asks me to move down. I haven't been so much as jostled. But I think we all know that this parable isn't really about which butts go in which seats. I think that generally speaking, which butts go in which seats is never really about which butts go in which seats. This is a parable about power, about who has it, about what we do with it. It's about power. And not like, electricity and not authority either, because authority and power are different. When you join a new organization, go to a new group, go to some new thing, we often think that the person in authority is the one who has the power. The one who calls the meeting is the one who can get stuff done. But if you've joined a club, a group, an organization, a church, maybe, you have found that there's the people in authority, right, who are the ones that are given the job and the task of leading, but then there's the person who gets stuff done, who knows people, who just kind of knows how things work. And when you want something done, they're the one you go talk to. That's power. And they're different. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about power, which means that I'm almost certain to get myself in trouble. Because that's kind of how power works. So we'll talk first a little bit about some things that I've learned about power and myself, and then we'll talk about us. So talking about myself, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but I am a white man. I was born this way. This is just kind of how God made me. I didn't ask to be one. I wasn't given a choice. I was just born in this body. And recently I've learned some things about what it means to be a person with this body. And part of that was going to hear a speaker over at Antioch Lutheran Church in Farmington Hills. There was a book tour, and the author came and spoke, and so a fair number of the council and the pastors went. The book is by a pastor named Lenny Duncan, and the title, which I messed up at the last worship, so let me see if I get it right because it's long, the title of the book is Dear Church, and the subtext is a love letter from a black preacher to the whitest denomination in the U.S. I got it mostly right. That's the idea, okay? Dear Church, a love letter from a black preacher to the whitest denomination in the U.S. If you didn't know, the whitest denomination in the U.S. is us. We are part of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. 20 years ago, when the ELCA was formed, we were 92% white folks and 8% other folks. We set a goal that in I don't think we set a date on it, just our goal was that we would be 90% white and 10% other folks. We have grown to the point of being 94% white. So not going so well, I guess, towards that goal. So we are the whitest denomination in the U.S. And Pastor Lenny got up to speak at this event, and he started his talk by saying, I want to set some ground rules. There are some things that I just want to be clear about. He said, I'm here to share my experiences, my story with you, and so we're going to set some parameters for that. And one of the parameters that he said was, if you're the kind of person who's going to raise your hand with a question, I want to hear from you. I want to hear your questions. Ask me your questions. Fire away. But he said, if you're the kind of person who's going to raise your hand and say, I don't have a question, I have more of a comment, he said, I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to cut you off. And he said a lot of other things, didn't he, Joan? But he said that. And that got my attention. I was thinking about that. I was thinking, okay, what is that about? Where does that come from? Where does that sentiment come from? Why does he need to say that? And he's trying to say that. I thought about this a lot. He's saying that because it's time for stories to be heard that don't get heard a lot. That's what this was about. This was about telling his story, and it's a story that doesn't get heard, because the story that gets heard a lot, the story that gets heard most commonly, is my story. The story of the white dude, right? And the power that I have just because I was born in this body, right? When we go to dinner as a family, the check comes to me. It just does. And it annoys me sometimes. We went out to the place that in 2018 was voted best sushi in Detroit. Is like 2 miles from the house, so we went there a couple weeks ago. It's like, we'll go get some sushi. I didn't want to see how much it cost. I just want to enjoy my dinner. They bring the check to me. Always. The only time the check doesn't come to me is when we're out to dinner with my dad. Because he's an older white guy. So the oldest white guy gets the check, right? Even if I go out to eat with my mom, if I go out to eat with my mom, who is older than me, I get the check. We go to buy a car, they talk more to me. We go to get a refinance on the house, or a mortgage, or a home equity loan, or a line of credit. They talk more to me. When people come here to church, right? When they come and they wander in the office, whatever, and 2 pastors are standing there. Cindy says, here's the pastors. They look at me. Just by default. It's just kind of how it is. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. It just happens by virtue of being in this body. And it's, you just got to look at the numbers. 94% of Fortune 500 CEOs in this country look like me. 94%. You look at Congress. It's mostly people who look like me. This is the most diverse Congress we've ever had. It's still mostly people who look like me. The higher up you go in a company and you look at their management, the higher up you go towards the top, they're people who look like me. And people who look like me are 35% of the country. I have this power. It doesn't mean life is unicorns and rainbows. It doesn't mean I get everything handed to me on a silver platter, that I don't have to work, that I don't have to try, that I don't have struggles. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that I have somehow been given a place at the head of the table that I didn't necessarily deserve or even seek. And what do I do with that? What do I do with that? And I have power by virtue of my job too. I stand up here every week and I give a talk, and I'm expected to do that. And if one of you was to do that, if Jeff Schuman, after the gospel reading, was to say, I'm going to give the sermon this week, and stand up and start talking, what would people say? They would say, who does he think he is? Maybe you've heard that one a few times before, Jeff. They'd say, who does he think he is? Who does this guy think he is? Doesn't he know his place? I have this power that I've been given. And if you think about it, right now, I am literally talking down to you. I'm trying not to figuratively, right? I'm trying not to figuratively. But literally, I am literally standing above you, and I am literally talking down to you. Well, what does Jesus say about what we do with our power? He says to give the seat to the person who is lower. So I've decided something. I have decided that I am not going to speak to you here anymore. It was a good spot. It was comfy. But I'm never going to do that again. You will never, yeah, amen, right? You will never hear another sermon from me from there. Because this call that Jesus gives us is a call when we have power to give it to those who don't. And that's what Pastor Lenny Duncan was trying to talk about using my power, your power, our power, to give it to those who don't have it, so that they can be heard, so their gifts can be used, so that they can be the people God made them to be. And the reason for that is right there. It's the cross. Because that's what Jesus did. You see, he had all the power in the universe, really. He had the seat at the head of not just the table, but of everything. And what he chose to do was to come to this earth, sit at the bottom of the table, suffer, die, give his life for you, for me, for all of us. He chose to give up his power for us. And he asks us to do the same. And maybe you think you don't have power. Maybe you think nobody listens to you. You don't matter. But if you've been here just for this little amount of time, you already have a little bit. Because next week someone's going to come to this place who's never been here before. They might not know when to stand up or sit down. Might not know where the bathrooms are, the coffee. They might not know these things, and you do. And you can share that with them. And yes, it'll mean maybe a little bit less of a worship experience for you, but you'll have shared your place at the table, given someone a higher seat. I learned that sitting at the table and telling people what to do isn't the path to changing the world. Listening and hearing people is. And maybe if we can all do that together, that'll be a wedding feast to go to. And maybe that can change the world when it feels like individually we can't. Amen.